We have the film footage from Orlando Lippert, who is a Paramount employee and cameraman, who is in Chicago on May 30th of 1937 when conflict breaks out during a labor protest. Now, to be clear here, this is men, women, children, Sunday morning. They're all dressed in their Sunday best, and they've had this picnic sort of gathering, and now they're going to do a labor march outside of Republic Steel. And 2 years earlier, in 1935, there had been acts passed saying that people had the right to gather and protest for labor purposes. This is it's white, black, Latino, all together in this labor protest. And they gather, they march, and they come to a group of about 260 Chicago police officers. Chicago police officers at the time had two things that we wouldn't expect them to have. One is they had a bunch of tear gas. That tear gas was not Chicago PD issued. That tear gas was supplied by Republic Steel. The other thing that they had was they had different nightclubs than they normally have. Chicago PD at the time issued these like short, rounded nightclubs. These were not what these guys were carrying. These guys were carrying oak hatchet handles, like long. You can see it in the video. You can see it in the pictures. These long hatchet handles that were painted white. And so all of the Chicago PD are armed with these longer than normal tools and a bunch of tear gas. And there's a conflict. The Chicago PC says you have to stop, you have to go back. Something happens. We don't actually have that first 7 seconds because Orlando Lippert was changing the lens of his camera at that exact second. But we do have the aftermath, which is an entire wall of Sunday best dressed protesters running away from the police and being fired upon. With like a bunch of them are shot, and there's a whole bunch of beatings and head injuries that come out of this thing. 10 people die as a result of the shooting, and there's about 50 people shot total. 10 of them die, and there's something like 25 traumatic brain injuries, sort of level head injuries that come out of this. And Paramount doesn't know what to do with the film because they've just filmed the Chicago Police Department just absolutely attacking this crowd of fleeing protesters, right? The newspaper tries to spin it as like an equal match, but Paramount has the film, and they sit on it. And eventually it gets subpoenaed into a investigation of what's happening. And now we have it. So we can see what happens when the Chicago PD that day met with all of these protesters. During the testimony, a woman named Luby Marshall testifies that after this attack, the Chicago PD does end up loading up a bunch of injured people into paddy wagons to take them to the hospital. But they actually take the longer way to the hospital. They kind of drive around Chicago for a minute. And the paddy wagon that's designed to hold 8 people has 16 people in it. And during that ride, she's sitting next to a guy who asks her for a cigarette. She gives him a cigarette. It falls out of his mouth, and he says, "Thanks anyway," and expires right next to her in the paddy wagon as they're taking the long way to the hospital. This is this major incident, and the film of it is very, very clear. And they didn't put it out at the time because they were worried that this would cause huge civil unrest in the United States at the time. 1937, into the Depression era, but not in World War II yet. And Paramount literally kind of didn't release it because they were so scared that the actual truth of what had happened being visible to people would be powder keg.
This is the scene showing the strikers having arrived to confront the police and demand their right to peacefully picket in front of the mill gate. They are arguing with Captains Mooney and Captain Kilroy, explaining to him their right to peacefully picket in front of the mill gate. You can see some of the strikers vigorously arguing with the police. This scene takes place momentarily after a lens change showing the police firing their guns, clubbing the pickets, shooting tear gas. There was a tear gas bomb streaming through the air. If you look closely, you can see the police with their guns in their hand, some of them firing into the backs of the pickets as they struggle to run away from the police. 7 of the 10 men who were killed on that day were shot in the back. The other 3 were shot in the side as they sought to evade the police and to run backwards in the direction from which they had come. There's Loopy Marshall, a social worker from Hull House, being prodded by a police billy club. Workers are down on the field, having been shot. There were 30 others that were injured by bullet wounds that day, as well as approximately 60 more who were clubbed and beaten unmercifully.